Hey guys and welcome to the video. Today we're talking about Saints Row, something nice and positive for once. I thought today it'd be a really fun video idea to go through every single Saints Row game and talk about the one feature that to me sticks out the most. The thing that when I think of that game comes to mind first. For some of these games I'm gonna kinda cheat and have two because let's be honest, some of these games are a lot more interesting than the others. And we're basically going to just take a deep dive into what makes all these games special in these elements. I thought it'd be fun, so let me know if you like this sort of video idea, and let's get into it. Okay, so for Saints Row 1, there's so many elements that come to mind. I mean, it's got an amazing story, a wonderful color palette, a really fun gameplay loop. The controls are really fluid, and honestly, one of the best feeling parts about the game is the controls. But to me, the number one thing that sticks out is the attention to detail and making the city come to life. This can be things like actual billboards having phone numbers that you can call up in-game and actually get a response from, shops having opening and closing times, the fact you can rob stores whilst they're closed, the fact that these fast food chains actually work and also you get superpowers from them, which is pretty cool. Of course, that's not necessarily real-world elements, but it makes use of all the real-world elements. For me, it's how the map really encourages you to use all of the elements to your advantage, and how it also kind of makes you want to explore the real-world side of things. Like, to me, there is nothing cooler than going into a store late at night, cracking that safe, picking up the package and delivering it somewhere. To me, that's always been something that's super fun, and I think it actually makes use of real-world elements. Of course, if you are in a gang, you might go stealing at night. And stuff like this was really lost in the later games, even Saints Row 2, for example. And it really comes and sticks out to me because it's one of the things that when I go to the newer Saints Row games, I miss the most. I think the map interactivity with the player honestly peaked in Saints Row 1. Don't get me wrong, it's not that it's bad in every other Saints Row, I just think Saints Row 1 is great at it. I mean, you got a working train system, which is really cool, that never came back in 3, 4, anything else really. I mean, you've also got places like the hair salons that you can go to and actually get haircuts. Of course, this was then turned into images designed and kind of simplified in Saints Row 2. Some people may like it, some people may hate it. I'm impartial to it, but I do think it sticks out for Saints Row 1. And even some of the smaller things like having wildlife and butterflies in that game, it's just stuff like that that to me brings the map to life. And of course, don't get me wrong, it's not that the future maps are bad. I just think the way it incorporates more real world elements and makes use of every element of the map is really cool in that game. And don't get me wrong, the system isn't perfect, you do lose stuff like the expanded crib customization and stuff, but I think personally, the fact it makes use of so many random buildings around the map for various things, whereas the future games, they kind of just have these set locations. I just feel like there's less types of stores in Saints Row 2 and stuff compared to Saints Row 1. I feel like there's less types of locations and less features you can do once you actually get to these key buildings in Saints Row 2 and 3 and 4 opposed to Saints Row 1. And to me, I just think the way it utilizes the map for the player's enjoyment is really good in that game. So that's why I'm giving Saints Row 1 the real world elements or the map utilization category. I think that that's really where it shines for me, and it's the reason I come back and play the game the most. Now, Saints Row 2, that's a tricky one, because to me, there's two things that spring to mind, and I feel I have to talk about both of them, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. The first thing that comes to mind is the damn story. I mean, talk about emotional reality. You got Carlos's death, how you kill Junichi, all these really cool key moments that transpire. It's so fantastic, man. I mean, when Aisha died, I genuinely was like, oh my god, did that just happen? And then when you kill Shogo to get revenge, you're like, oh my god, is this even happening? It's got one of the darkest and thrilling tales in gaming, in my opinion, and the story is top tier. The mission design is really fun as well. That's always a key point in stories. I think it's paced relatively well. I don't think there's too many filler missions or too many filler moments in the story. There's not too many issues I have with the story personally. There's a couple things I think we could have done without. I really wish we'd have got, obviously, an answer to what happened to Dex. But of course, you could argue that that potential was wasted past Saints Row 2, not in Saints Row 2. I think that all the actors that played all the characters did a fantastic job, and I think it's really well put together. I really like the start from scratch approach they had with Saints Row 2, you know, forming friendships with Johnny, Sean D. Pierce, getting you basically a new cast of characters to join alongside you whilst taking care of some of the old ones like Julius. They had a really good way of keeping it respectful, bringing new faces in, whilst not making you absolutely despise the fact that the old faces are gone. Something I think we can say that, say, the reboot, for example, did not master. I think it has some of the best cinema moments in the Saints Row series whatsoever. When you kill Julius is literally one of the most important parts of the series to date, if not the most important. It's one of the few plot lines that got a really good ending to it. I think the way the game also makes you genuinely hate the villains is a big bonus. Some games have this thing where, like, the villain just isn't too villainy, if that makes sense. Like the reboot, for example. Honest to God, Do you really hate the leader of the Panteros? Do you even know who the leader of the Panteros is? Exactly. You don't care. You're impartial to him. You killing him, it doesn't matter. It doesn't take anything away from you. Whereas, when you finally get to watch Johnny Gat execute his revenge against Shogo, you feel something inside you. You go, oh my god, it finally just happened. And you're taken back and you go, wow, that was the perfect conclusion to what we have been building up to. And I think that there's a way that Saints Row 2 does it that's just so unlike every other game in the series. Saints Row 1 isn't bad, mind you, and honestly, there's a lot of stories here that I think have good, like, conclusions to certain plot points, but when it comes down to the story, Saints Row 2 really is the whole package. It has that emotional reality, it has those layers of depth, it has the kind of conclusions to all the stories you want, again, apart from the Dex Saga. So when it comes to the story, I mean, it's just basically impeccable. I mean, I can't think of many lowlights when it comes to Saints Row 2's story. The writing's really good, it's not cringy, it's not embarrassing, it has a way of retaining its humour whilst also being serious. I think, again, the balance of the story is really good too. I mean, you laugh at parts of Saints Row 2, and you almost want to cry at parts of Saints Row 2. There are very few stories that can execute both of those in the same sort of plot, and I think that, like, a lot of appreciation is shown towards Saints Row 2 for being able to do that. I think it's really one of the ways that the series excelled in its early days. So yeah, the story is definitely something that comes to mind. It's a decent length, it's not padded out, it genuinely feels worth playing through every single time. But then, as I want to give it to the story so much, the one thing that comes to mind is Stillwater. Stillwater in Saints Row 2. This is one of those times where it's like, okay, as much as I want to give the story the sole attention here, can we just ignore how big of a factor this is to Saints Row 2? I mean, you've got one of, if not the most diverse maps in the open world crime game genre as a whole. I mean, let's be real, Saints Row 2's diversity is fantastic. You've got so many interiors you can explore, so many hidden details throughout the world. You've got so many NPCs with different personalities. The whole city comes to life. And whilst you're definitely lacking some of the more map utilization elements like Saints Row 1 had, stuff like robberies, barbershops, etc., I think it does make up for it and expands upon it by having so many cool nooks and crannies hidden away. Like when you discover Zombie Uprising for the first time and you realize, oh my god, there is a zombie mode set in a part of Stillwater, and you're like, wow, that's crazy cool. Or when you discover the pyramid, or when you can get to the top of the altar building and actually look around and explore. It's one of those maps where, as you go through it, you unlock areas that aren't immediately locked off after you've completed the mission. One thing I hated about all the future Saints Row games past this point is the fact that once you did the mission, the location you had the mission in just vanishes, disappears, basically doesn't exist anymore. And it was always such a big bummer to me because I was always such a big fan of exploring these interiors, looking at the little details. One of the weird things I do in gaming, and I don't know why, is I love to look at the little bits of text on like walls and stuff and random sheets of paper. I always find it super interesting. And of course, half these locations are really unique and actually set to the plot of the mission, so there's so many places I love exploring in Saints Row 2 that just make it all worth it. Whereas again, the other games, they just don't really have that, and I think that is something that we should all be aware of when talking about the map quality of Saints Row 2. On top of this, stunt jumps are in perfect performance, flushly built into the map's design. You really can't tell where they are until you need to hit them, and I think that that's absolutely fantastic. Whilst I would say the graphical fidelity has taken a little hit, I think the diversity and how different areas of the maps are has taken a big improvement, so it kind of balances itself out. I think all the little secrets and all the massive interiors you can explore, like the mall for example, basically bring up any shortcomings of the map as a whole and make it 100% worth exploring for years. I mean, even now, as a Saints Row fan and player, for like over a decade, I'm still discovering new things in Stillwater. It is fantastic, man. I mean, you got the secret islands you can explore, you got the cabinet that's hidden in the map, you got UFOs, you got all these ridiculously cool things, man. And honestly, I think that if it wasn't for Stillwater being as cool, as interesting, and as content-packed as it is, we wouldn't be talking about Saints Row 2 to this day. So for me, I feel I have to split Saints Row 2 into these two categories and give both the map and the story the highlight here as the best things to come from Saints Row 2. Don't get me wrong, there's about a million other things I want to talk about with Saints Row 2. It is the GOAT. But still, I think these two really do shine above the rest in why I love Saints Row 2 so much. Which brings me to Saints Row 3, the black sheep for me. I'm not the biggest fan of this game, as you all know. Don't get me wrong, it's a Saints Row game, I've played it to death. But there's so many shortcomings with this game that really become apparent when you play pretty much any other game in the series. This one starts to fatigue me a little after playing. So, with that being said, what's the highlight? What's the standout moment? This one wasn't as easy as Saints Row 2, but for me, I think it has to come down to the actual missions themselves. Now, unfortunately, there's a lot of padded out filler moments in Saints Row 3 which really suck. Activities as missions is lame. They're not missions, come on, man. But some of the missions you do have are absolutely incredible and are really fun. I mean, you got Deckers.die, you got Murder Brawl, stuff like that's incredible. You got Party Time. I mean, honestly, it has got some of the most standout and badass moments in the series to date. I would argue the mission quality is what saved the game for me. And don't get me wrong, sadly they're not all up to that standard, but man, the ones that bang are amazing. The ones that are really good, they're worth playing, bro. Like, I honestly, if you were to say to anyone right now, throughout every single Saints Row game they've ever played, what to you was the most badass, coolest moment? I think, honestly, in at least their top 3, one of them has to be diving down into the pool listening to Power by Kanye West. Let's just be real, okay? It's there. It's not just the badass moments too. I think some of the environments and the missions are really cool, actually. I can't lie, I feel like Saints Row 3 is arguably the most devoid of these really cool environments and settings for the game because Steelport fucking sucks. But I think some of the levels they take you to are genuinely really interesting. Whether you're on board a big stag carrier, or you're killing zombies in Zombie Island, or whether you're in a Deckers.die weird cyber mission thing, or whether you're in the middle of a wrestling ring, I think, honestly, the locations it has you fighting at are really cool. So I think for me, the missions definitely come to mind when it comes to Saints Row 3, and honestly, I would say it is what stands out about the game the most. I feel like most of the personality comes from the moments in the missions, not the moments outside the missions, which I'm not sure you could say to pretty much any other Saints Row game. I feel like a lot of the open world content is what people play Saints Row for, whereas for Saints Row 3, at least for me, it purely comes down to playing that campaign and playing through those really fun missions. It's a shame the game wasn't completely padded with these really cool missions because, honestly, I think it'd have been a top tier game even if the open world did kind of suck. But I guess it is what it is, and you can't really beat around the bush with how great or bad that game is. Saints Row 3 is a very indecisive game for me. I'd never know how I feel on it fully. Do I love it? Do I hate it? I don't know. It's not great, let's be real. But the campaign and the missions in it, fantastic. So many standout moments, so many badass moments, and that is why I'm giving Saints Row 3 the campaign and missions. Now, for Saints Row 4, it's a weird one for me. Now, it's no secret that Saints Row 4 is my little guilty pleasure, okay? I wholeheartedly do love Saints Row 4. I think it's a really fun game, it's a bit of a love letter to the past, and honestly, it brings back all these beloved characters for me that I get such a nostalgia kick from it. It will always hold a special place in my heart. Now, there's 2 things that come to mind for me, specifically about Saints Row 4, that I love to death. One is the villain. I think Zinyak is an incredible villain and one to not be messing around with. I mean, the way he acts is so fantastic, he's so charismatic and so hateable, and that's exactly what you want in a villain. I think by the end of the game, you genuinely want to take down Zinyak, and I think that that's what makes that game's campaign so special, and honestly, I think Zinyak kind of carries the game for me, at least in its story department. But to be honest, regardless of that, I think the main thing I have to give Saints Row 4 is fun factor. As much as I want to give it to the really decently fun story and the really cool villain, fun factor as a whole is definitely why Saints Row 4 is so good. Whether it's super sprinting at 1,000,000 miles an hour, jumping into the sky with a single click of a button, or using telekinesis to throw bins at hobos, there's seriously nothing better than kicking back and playing Saints Row 4. I mean, on a real, I can't think of any game I've ever played, pretty much ever, that has got such weird, goofy, and fun weapons with goofy, fun mechanics that can just make me seriously sit back and go, wow, this is a blast. It's one of those games that, you know, there's nothing complex to it. It doesn't need to be complex. It's just good, dumb fun. And there's nothing wrong with that, okay? I understand it's not what the foundation of the series was built on, but let's be real, it hasn't been that for, like, so many games at this point. I think that what I love about Saints Row 4 the most is just the fact that I can sit back after a long day's work, chill out, load up Saints Row 4, and just shoot some aliens. You know, it's one of those games where you don't have to use any brain space. You can just chill out, enjoy it, and have a laugh. It also has one of the best DLCs ever, the Saints Save Christmas. Probably my favorite DLC in gaming as a whole. Such a fantastic mission pack with so much charisma. Oh my god, fantastic. So, for Saints Row 4, I'm going to go fun factor. I think there's nothing better than just sitting back and having a great time playing it. Now for Get Out of Hell, I'm going to keep this one short and sweet because I'm not particularly fond of this game and I don't really have that much great to say about it. So for me, it comes to flying. Now, to be honest, this is where I've spent most of the time playing Get Out of Hell. I like to fly about, collect clusters, and have good times. I'm a simple man, and flying in this game is simple, good fun. It's a little janky to get to grips with when you first get the game, but I think once you're into it, you really do know how to control it and make it feel kind of fun and cool. And honestly, I don't think there's much more fun than going through hell, flying through the really cool environments, and basically collecting clusters and having a good time. The map was another thing that came to mind for me, but honestly, I don't think it's good enough to really outweigh how good the flying controls are and how much better it feels than Saints Row 4's gliding. So I think that for me, it really is the forefront of the game, which is flight. Oh, on to the big boy, the main game, the big cheese, Saints Row 2022. What's he going to talk about? What's he going to discuss? I bet you're wondering right now. How about the LARPing? Yeah, no, we're not doing LARPing, don't worry. Honestly, Saints Row 2022, very divisive game, but obviously for me, I enjoyed it a lot more than most. I really did enjoy my time with it. Unfortunately, the more stuff that comes out about the game, the less I can kind of just sit back and enjoy it, knowing how bad things were behind the scenes. But as a product as itself, I did get more fun than most, so, you gotta commend it for that. There's two things that stick out to me again with this game. That is the map and the customization. So let's start with the map. Santo Eliso is beautiful. Honestly, if it wasn't for a few shortcomings, I'd put it up there with Stillwater, to be honest. I think there's something really fun about going around that environment. I never was really a big fan of desert maps, but honestly, I found the desert in this game to be genuinely pretty interesting. I love exploring it, and honestly, man, super fun map. You got so many different and varied districts too. I mean, like the Marshall area is really cool. You got the big Marshall boot there. That's such a standout location. On the flip side, though, you got stuff like where the Panteros reside, which is nice and run down. And then you got the idols that are chilling up in the villas and stuff towards that side of the map. And then when you add in the DLC maps that came later in the game's lifespan, you got a whole LARP district, a whole Hollywood-looking district. You got Boot Hill Island, which I just remembered existed. And now I want to remember it didn't exist, because, God, that DLC was bad. I'm joking, of course. Honestly, the map was really solid in the reboot, and for all the game's faults, you gotta commend it on really bringing us back to form with its map selection. If it wasn't for the NPCs and the lack of interiors, it'd be up there, but when you compare Santo Eliso to Steelport, pfft, night and day. I really do think that the map was a standout moment for me, and honestly, I think the fact that that was the map I was driving around kinda carried the game for me to a certain degree. I mean, if we had the reboot set in fucking Steelport, I'd have wrote the game off so quickly. But I think the fact that, we're chilling in Santo Eliso, it makes things so much better. It kind of eases the blow of all the other things that are still to come, because at the end of the day, you're driving around a nice pretty map and pretty environments, and it looks beautiful. That's what I like to see. But of course, it's not the only thing that sticks out about that game. Another really solid point is the customization. Obviously, this was the return of semi-layered clothing and all these really complex customization elements. I know some people think Saints Row 2's customization is better, which I will not argue with, but I will politely disagree. I personally, at least, got more enjoyment out of the reboot's customization. It's not to say that the systems are better, it's more so to say I was able to customize the character how I wanted better in the reboot compared to Saints Row 2. It just had more options that fit me personally and the brand of the channel. So when playing Saints Row 2022, I do genuinely quite like how my character can end up looking and all the different designs you can have. You can make it really, really weird, really, really fun, really, really cool. And honestly, yeah, I do understand it has shortcomings, but I think that for the most part, the customization is top tier. We do lack things like walk styles, which is really lame, and proper layered clothing. There's so many little issues to it, but for the most part, I'm quite happy with how Saints Row 2022's customization came out. There's also the style app, which is a very split decision type of feature. Some people love it, some people hate it. I don't fully know how I feel on it, to be honest with you. On the one hand, it's very, very convenient to be able to change how I look on the go, especially with so many options. On the flip side, it does kind of take away from what Saints Row 1 had earlier in this video in utilizing the map. Basically, you visit every store once, you buy everything in it, and you have no reason to ever go back. So, pros and cons. Overall, though, I think the customization was very, very good for Saints Row 2022, and it's the reason I think it stands out so much alongside its map. But wait, we're not done yet. What's that? Do you hear this? It's a plot twist. Today we're talking about the spin-off games as well. Haha! You didn't expect that, did you? So, Saints Row Undercover. What's good, my homie? Let's talk about it. Now, I'll be honest, this game is incredibly unfinished compared to the other unreleased game that we're going to talk about later on. So, for this game, I'm just going to go with the chaos. I'm talking about the product we got, not what was planned. And I think, honestly, the fact that the second you get in the car, you start spinning and spazzing out throughout the sky. The fact that the game's so janky and chaotic in that way, I think it's really fun. I would never obviously recommend anyone try and play through Saints Row Undercover. The only thing I could ever recommend is getting on for half an hour and just exploring Stillwater and seeing how crazily fucked up everything is. That really is the highlight of the game for me, and, you know, it's unfinished, so it makes sense. But man, was it some good fun to kind of cause chaos in that game. And then we have Saints Row Moneyshot. Now, this one's actually a very interesting one for me because I personally really like this game. I think Moneyshot, if it was to have released, would have been one of my favorites. I think it's got a really cool sort of design to it, and I get very sad when I find out that it's not finished and I can't play it fully. Now, there's a few things that make this so cool. I could talk about how it draws in elements from other games like Saints Row 3 and some of the levels, and obviously how cool that is, you know, going through the streets of Steelport and kind of guiding the bullet through it is really cool. The bullet controls in itself are really fun and fluid. But for me, I like that it is as close to a canon ending for Dex as we're going to get. I kind of make it the canon in my head that what happened was is Dex got assassinated by an alter person that we kind of sent after them. I mean, speaking of assassinations, maybe we should have called Autor for the recent one. I'm kidding. Relax. So, that's it for every single game. Let me give you a quick recap. Saints Row 1, real world elements. It's fantastic, and how it utilizes the map is incredible. Saints Row 2, you got the map and the story. Watch that segment, okay? That is fantastic. Both of them are great elements of the game, and they really come together to make the full product. Saints Row 3, you got the missions. Oh my god, aren't they so fun? Honestly, I do love Saints Row 3's missions. For as many faults as the game has, it's fucking fun when you're playing through that campaign. Saints Row 4, you got fun factor and villain. Zinyak is fantastic, and the missions are fantastic, and the chaos you can cause in the city, amazing too. Gather to Hell, you got the flight controls, because what the hell else are you going to have with Gather to Hell? Saints Row 2022, you got the map and customization, both very good elements of that game, and honestly, probably the few highlights the game actually has to offer. Saints Row Undercover, you got the chaos the game can cause, and Moneyshot, you got Dex. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that boring stuff. I don't know why I even bother telling this, because none of you are going to do it anyway. Are you? Let's be honest. If you're going to comment, you'd have commented 10 minutes ago when you disagreed with my opinion, not at the end of the video.